Two things to think about today. One, this episode may look like it's just two coaches talking inside coaching. It's not. Ken Dreyer, the person I'm speaking with, is not a coach. And so this is actually an episode that I would recommend to managers, people interested in coaching, people that mentor others, people that are remotely curious about what coaching is or what good coaching questions look like, or I don't know what else. So we'll stop there. One other thing to keep in mind with this episode, technology was not in our favor on this particular day. And even though I double checked all the settings, my audio got recorded from my earbuds instead of the robust sounding microphone that I'm using now. So apologies for that. Hopefully you can overlook it and still hear whatever I have to say. Here we go. Today, I'm having a conversation with Ken Dreyer about a book called The Coaching Habit. Say less, ask more, and change the way you lead forever. Ken and I met at Red Hat working on a particular software product, and somewhere along the line, I mentioned this book to Ken, and I mentioned this book to a lot of people in the last year, and he's the only one that came back and said, check this out, this works. Oh, this was really good. We were talking about it over chat the other day, and he was sharing once again how it had informed a conversation he was having with some people, and I was joking. I was like, man, that book just has a lot of juice. And then I came back a couple days later, and I thought, wait, I think it has even more juice. Let's talk about it. So here's Ken.
Hey, yeah. So, like John said, I am currently at Red Hat. I'm a software engineer. And so, I'm not a manager. This book is directed to managers, but I'm not one of those. But I am a team leader, and I'm really passionate about fixing broken processes. And at my current job, as a software engineer, of course, that means fixing a lot of code, because sometimes the processes are bad because the code's bad. So we have to make our tools better. But it also means, building a lot of good working relationships with the people around the organization who can affect the changes that I need. And sometimes fixing broken processes also means like helping the junior developers on our team level up. And the further that I go in my career, the more important that I'm finding that kind of teaching side of the job, to be. So I think if I could retitle this book, I would probably call it How to Ask Good Questions. Because I think the author's main point is that we just give advice way too often, and coaching is all about asking effective questions.
Yeah, he calls it taming the advice monster, which I think is a great term.
Right. One of the problems that I found is like, when I give advice over and over, then I become this like oracle to the rest of the team. Like, oh, go ask Ken, because he knows about this thing or whatever. And it becomes this huge over-reliance problem where everybody looks to me for the answers. And it just leads to some really bad patterns of working.
And you were the oracle. When I remember, but not in a bad way.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I never saw the bad side of it if there was one. But yeah, you were the go-to guy for certain things. It was like Ken holds. I don't even really know what an oracle is, but oracle. What is an oracle?
I guess I see it as like, in the ancient Greek times where they'd go to some temple and like, tell me the answer, should I go fight this battle or do whatever, right? Yeah. And like I said, it leads to some bad patterns. Like, obviously, like I want to go on vacation, I want to have times where like there's a break from work. And especially in the early years, it would just like, I didn't understand how to set those boundaries, it would just get kind of frustrating. There's a lot of things that you can do when you're in that situation. One of the things I found really helpful that this book doesn't talk about is writing things down. When somebody asks you a question in private, and there'd be just so many instant message conversations or whatever, it's like, capture that question, write it down, put it in a blog post, or, put it into a document space that your team has that you can share that information. So the next time that question comes up, and it will, like, you can point people at that knowledge base, essentially. But that's just one thing. Like the bigger picture, that this book is talking about is really coaching and mentoring and walking people through how to discover answers on their own.
So that's fascinating. You're not a manager. I do see you as a leader. And now in your current role, and we haven't even talked about what your current role is these days. Do you have people that report to you? Are you a team? Like, what are you?
Yeah, good question. So I was recently promoted to principal engineer. And so, we had another principal engineer on the team, but he left for another opportunity. So now I'm the only principal engineer on the team. And, there's a couple other people who are also engineers on the team as well. But basically, we're all what I think the term is like individual contributors, so we don't have people reporting to us. We don't have, like do other people's timesheets or that kind of stuff that I typically would think of a manager doing. But you're right. Like I'm really passionate about leading our team well, leveling up the team, making sure that, especially, because we get junior developers on the team, we get interns, like we need these people to grow and develop.
So how have you found the things? Because I flipped through this book over the weekend fairly rapidly, but wrote a page or two of notes of just different things. And one of the things that struck me was how direct and how evasive when I say evasive, I mean, someone comes to your cube. That doesn't really happen these days. They ping you on Slack or cube. IRC, right. Whatever. And Ken, I have this problem. And I had a hard time as I was reading some of these, like one of the questions is, what's the real challenge for you here? So, I mean,
right.
Someone comes in, they ping you and they say, Ken, it's not building. What do I do? And you say, what's the real challenge for you here?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And, and I guess kind of taking a step back, what you're referring to is this book, it breaks down like 7 good questions to ask in coaching. And the one that you're referring to is like, this question he calls a focus question, which is like, what's the real problem here for you? And, that's a great question to ask for people. One of the things he talks about there is the proliferation of problems. Like somebody might come to you and be like, hey, this software is not building. Oh, and, so-and-so is out of the office and I can't ask them. Or, it's just kind of this chain of problems that are very, very loosely connected, if at all. And I just find myself asking like, what are we, what's the real problem here? What are we trying to solve is another way that I would say that, what problem are we trying to solve is another way that I've kind of rephrased that sometimes. And you're right. Sometimes that does sound direct. I think the thing that I like about this book is how he breaks down each of those questions into variations of how to apply it. I had a boss one time. Oh, and I should say the first question on his list is a Kickstart question. He says, what's on your mind? So you like ask somebody, you're on a phone, maybe it's like, hey, how are you? You can say, so what's on your mind? And it goes right away into what's exciting. And it's a great question. But I had a boss one time who just opened up every single one-on-one meeting with that exact question, what's on your mind, every week for years. So,
I'm hearing kind of a love-hate there.
That's exactly right. Love-hate, because like I've read this book, so I kind of understand a little bit more of what the intent is there. But you're right. Like you don't want this book to become a formula that you just kind of smack people with. Like here's another example of that. The second question is the awe question that he says, so you say, what's on your mind? And then someone brings that up. And then you say, and what else? Like to me, when I read that chapter, it's like, and what else? It's almost like, yeah, well, now that you've told me all that crap, like, tell me what's the real deal here? So you definitely, you have to build rapport with somebody and talk it through with them, and actually actively listen. And I think he talks a lot in this book about active listening. And maybe we can get into that in a minute. But yeah, you definitely can't use this as a formula to just stamp this on like a robot. I'm going to write a chat bot that's just going to
I bet you reply.
Could. Right.
Or maybe you already have.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, and the idea in a pure coaching context, which what I love
I'm going in three different directions. From a pure coaching context, the what else question is the idea that usually what someone brings as their topic or their problem is not their problem.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Now, the software won't build. I think sometimes these things don't translate well to a technology environment. The software doesn't build, and I've done everything I can to figure it out, and I can't figure it out, tends to lend the need for help. And there might also be something else going on there too, which is it won't build, and I'm afraid to ask this other person for help because they're going to bite my head off.
Right.
That's the real issue.
Yeah. One of the tools he refers to in the book is the 5 whys, which I love. And maybe you can, sometimes there's room to apply that of like, why would we want that particular branch to build right now when we're trying to ship or, just different things like that. But, one of the huge ones that I love, one of the big questions in here is how can I help? Like you said, it gets a lot of, I guess, the job stuff, that when people come to me and ask questions, oftentimes it's like they're seeking help. And so when I say, how can I help? That really focuses it. We used to have this problem in our chat rooms in Red Hat where people would say ping, they'd just say
the
ping,
naked ping.
Yes, the naked ping, right? And if you Google naked ping, it'll bring up this blog post that describes why that's a bad idea, or another form of that is hi. Somebody just sends you a message, hi, Ken. It's like, hello.
And what?
Right. And so, and originally John is talking about the bot thing because we did have a chat bot that would help us with a lot of different things, but the bot would respond to naked pings and say, hey, please go ahead and ask your question. Don't ask. But I started saying like, how can I help? Because I think that's a little bit more of a human response, but it also just cuts right to the issue of like, how can I actually help? So I think that one's very effective.
No, it is. A tweak on that I've also used and learned from another coach recently was when someone's in distress or they're stressed or they're just like, and they've thrown all this stuff is, what do you need right now?
Mm-hmm.
Or what do you need most? To help them kind of focus in on like, what do I really need? Oh, yeah, I needed to build, but really I need to figure out how I'm going to talk to this person because I need to have a relationship with them and the relationship isn't currently working.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, let's work on that.
Yeah, I really like that because sometimes, like getting back into that over-reliance thing, I can fall in love with this how can I help question because it brings it back to me. Like, how can I help you? And really what, obviously that's, you never want to be unhelpful, but at the same time, asking like, what do you need helps that person put the focus back onto like, oh, there's actually 2 of us in this conversation right now.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. As you were reading this book, what were some of the biggest surprises?
I think really it just struck me like how often I provide answers. He has this quote like, answers are closed doors and questions are open doors that invite you in. Sometimes I would see questions as threatening, especially when I'm in a position of power, or maybe this developer is like new to the company and they're a junior intern or whatever. But really like questions can be done in a non-threatening way. And he works through a lot of good ways to do that. Another thing that I really liked was this idea of getting comfortable with silence. As I've become more of the senior developer on my immediate team, I've learned to just like shut up during team meetings because in the book he says do everything that you can to not fill the void. And that doesn't mean that you'd never say anything. I can think of these things in black and white terms, but it really means like listen actively. Don't pounce anytime that somebody says the wrong word. Like listen, empathize, try to know what's on the team's mind, especially like the quieter people on the team, and try to draw them out.
What I hear under there, and I think this is part of active listening, is not listening to respond.
Yeah, exactly. And, one of the things, it's not in this book, but one of the things that helps me with that is like, taking notes and every meeting or call that I have, even if it's just like a 1 sentence summary. It's like Joe and I talked about the build system. It doesn't have to be this grand thing, but it really helps. It helps if I'm like in an awesome meeting where everybody wants to be there and there's a ton of great ideas. And it also helps if I'm in a meeting that's really lame and boring and frustrating and I don't want to be there. Start writing down like what's going on in this meeting.
I've done that.
Yeah, because it's a great way to distance myself. And, I start seeing things written down on paper. You start to think strategically about like, what can I change here? Or, should I change anything here?
And for me, sometimes it was a way of just venting. And instead of being
Right.
stuck on the loop in my head, it was just trying to get some of it down on paper and
Totally.
a release valve. What else? You said there were several things you loved in this.
And what else? So,
That wasn't on purpose, I promise.
Asking one question at a time,
Oh,
so huge. And I'll say, just tying that back to the previous thing, again, like if I'm taking notes off to the side during a call or a meeting, that really helps me formulate exactly one question that I want to ask rather than, just shooting from the hip.
so it slows you down.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought of that as a benefit. That's beautiful. Keep going.
Yeah. There are some really great jumping off points in this book to some bigger topics. For example, he references the drama triangle in here, which I just really love, like the villain, the victim, and the hero. Not sure if he uses those exact terms, but that's kind of the idea that you can kind of bounce around that drama triangle, playing the role in each one. And so, like, for example, somebody came to me a few months back and was like, man, like, this is a friend, casual friend. They're like, my job just really sucks. This guy is in software engineering, so you kind of get the sense it's like, okay, are you looking for a job at Red Hat? Like, are you looking to move jobs? Are you like, I'm not sure where this conversation is going, So in those three roles on the drama triangle, it could be like, I guess in the villain role, be like, yeah, man, your job does suck. Like, that's too bad, or something like, kind of rubbing it in. Or in the hero role, it'd be like, okay, well, you know what, send me your resume and like, I'll go like apply to some jobs for you, or something. And then in the victim role, it would kind of swing back around to like, oh, like, why did I say that I was going to, take this guy's resume and start, shopping it around? Like, this guy, like he's not motivated. He's just doesn't have the skills, all that stuff. So you start playing the victim role of like, oh, I forced myself into this. I overcommitted and, it's woe is me kind of thing. But one of the cool things about this book is it talks so much about asking questions versus giving advice. And it really, when I ask the questions, plug the questions in here, it allows me to exit that drama triangle, and I can ask him. So, maybe not the question of how can I help right off the bat, but like, what's the real problem here for you would be a really great one to ask, and drill down on like, what do you not like about your job? And then some of the other questions, like, what do you want? Wow, I never thought about like, what do I actually want out of my job? That kind of stuff.
Say more about the drama triangle. So it's the way he calls it the Karman, Karman drama triangle. And you seem to be really familiar because we talked about this before and I just kind of skimmed past it. So the idea here for the listener is there's a triangle. And so there's 3 points in the triangle. And at one point is the villain. At one point is the victim. And at the other point is the hero.
Right.
My understanding of this, and maybe you can help me clarify, is identifying where you are in the triangle in a given situation. And then you want to leave the triangle?
Yeah, because otherwise you can get caught in that cycle, of just going back and forth between being the villain and the victim and the hero, over and over again. Kind of the cycle of either overcommitment or, just like in the villain role, it'd be like, hey, I'm not going to help you at all, I'm going to sabotage you, or something like that.
So the idea is we're operating from one of these points in the triangle, and it's not helping us.
Yes. Yes.
And the sooner we can exit the triangle, the better off we'll be in addressing whatever situation we're in.
Yeah.
Where do you usually find yourself in this triangle?
Oh, definitely. I try to stay away from the villain role, but I can totally oscillate between the hero and the victim thing of, again, with the overcommitment stuff. It's like, oh, well, I know how to fix the build system, so I should just go do that right now, even though it's Friday evening, and I got a thing to do with my family. It's like, nope, I should be the hero here and, type away. And then all of a sudden it's, past 5 p.m. on a Friday and I'm really feeling bitter. Like, this job, like why, nobody else can figure this out. Come on,
Well, what I'm hearing here too is it's kind of a dopamine hit. I'm going to feel really great because I'm going to swoop in with my cape on and save the day.
Right.
And then in saving the day, you move to the victim of like, oh my gosh, this is happening to me.
Right.
Life is happening to me. And then it could even, maybe in our worst moments, not you, maybe me, sweep over to the villain point of like, well, I'm going to stick it to these guys now because look what they did to me.
Right.
And then so drama triangle in the sense of this just perpetuates the drama and the pain.
Right. Right. And I think that also, when we haven't talked about the other party involved, but sometimes when you're involved with a tricky person, they can start trying to suck you in. If they are a villain, if they're playing the villain role, they can try to suck you in to be the hero or the victim. So the more people involved, the more complicated it gets.
Well, what's striking me too, do your drama triangles interact with each other? Like that sounds like a recipe for chaos.
Right. It totally does. Yeah. Yeah. If somebody's being the victim, they're trying to get you to engage as either a villain or a hero. If they're in a place of really, going through some hard things or a place of unhealth, that can totally happen.
Ooh, you just shed some new light on this thing for me. So if I'm in the, I don't know, say I'm in the villain point, I'm trying to get you to be the hero or the victim.
Yeah, sometimes, and it's subconscious for sure.
Oh yeah. No, I thought it was all
right.
scripted.
Yeah, that's right. So,
no, for sure. Huh. Yeah, Jim Dethmer has some stuff on this too. He calls it the drama triangle. I don't know if it's the same one, but I'll link to it because he talks about this in one of his podcasts and some of his work. That's when I first came across this term and then realized later that it was in this book. So,
cool.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Back to did you want to say any more about the drama triangle? Because I wanted to go back to this idea of asking one question.
Yeah, totally. Let's go back to that one.
It's so funny. I have a Post-it on my wall. It says, ask one question, ... Stop. It's been there for maybe 4 years, 5 years. I don't know. Somewhere at the beginning of my coaching training, it went up there and it's never left. And it just, I was laughing so hard. We were laughing so hard before I pushed record because I was asking Ken, how do you want me to introduce you? Well, I was thinking of introducing, I was like so busted.
Yeah.
Not only, and so I see this everywhere. I see it, and my biggest pet peeve these days is on podcasts with really, really well-known interviewers.
Yes.
Ken, I was wondering what you think about this idea of coaching. I've had a lot of coaching in my own life, and then they go on and on and on for like 5 minutes, and then it's
yes.
or they ask like 3 questions, and then where should we go from there? I don't know that I have a point, except that I wanted to make a point.
Well, I think you have an earlier podcast about this, if I'm right. But I think the big takeaway is like, it's just confusing. Which question am I supposed to answer?
Yes.
What was the question even?
Well, no, and it ties back to the thing of silence.
Yeah.
One question and a long, awkward pause can really reveal what's going on. And I learned this early in my project. I took this project management class at a local university that taught this. They said, in your project meetings, don't try to fill the space. When you ask a hard question, you ask for an update, like, when will this be ready? Don't fill the space. Just wait.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's worked for me and sometimes not, but more often than not, it did, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess I should leave this awkward silence in.
There you go.
Where should we go next?
Well, let's see. I had some questions for you.
Oh, do it. Do it. I love those. That'll make it even more interesting, especially if you disagree with me.
Okay. All right. Well, here's my questions for John. So you can meet many different people. Like I meet people at a party or in the park or my neighbor or something. When do I use these coaching questions?
Well, I was kind of asking you that at the beginning.
Yeah.
I would well, let's see. I think I would be coming from a place of saying, does this situation warrant this question? And if I wasn't sure, I might ask for permission. So one of the cornerstones of my experience, really good coaching and powerful, somewhat potentially offensive coaching is asking someone's permission. Hey, Fred, I know you've been sharing with me your job. Okay, the context is maybe we're at a barbecue, we're standing in someone's backyard, and Fred's been going on and on about how his job is just screwing him. I could just start saying, like, what's the challenge for you, Fred?
Right.
Which would be really awkward considering I don't really know Fred.
Right.
Or I could say, hey, Fred, I know we don't know each other very well. In my regular life, a lot of times I have conversations with people and sometimes ask them awkward but maybe powerful questions that help them get clarity. Would it be okay if I tried one on right now with you? Now, there's probably a smoother way to say that, but that's an example of asking permission.
Yeah.
Fred, can I get kind of awkward with you? Like, can I potentially be the person that you've never talked to at a barbecue before and speak to what I'm seeing and ask you some questions that might help you figure this out if you really want to figure it out? And sometimes that's even the first place to start. Yeah. There's no, it's a closed-in question, which is a, quote, not so great coaching question. But Fred, do you want to change the situation? Do you want it to be better? Or are you pretty cool with how it is?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is what it is. It's just, it's probably never going to change. I was just thinking.
Right.
Oh, okay. Well, if you ever want to do something with it, let me know. Like, we could have another conversation. Or it could be, it's about, it's killing my family and we're about to get divorced. So yeah, like anything you've got, I'll take right now. Okay, that's a totally different. In other words, so I think I would, I'd be checking in with the other person. I'd be checking in with the situation. I'd be checking in with myself. What's my motivation? Am I just looking to stroke my own ego with that I can ask this powerful question and stick it to this guy? Or like a recent podcast, like, where's my heart? Like, is my heart coming from a place of love and care and compassion for this person in front of me? My questions and where I'm coming from is going to be totally different than if I'm like, oh, I'm a coach. I can fix this guy's life. All right. Buckle up. Here we go. Answer my tough questions and you'll feel better. Yeah.
Or maybe feel worse. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm not coming to your backyard again, John. Thanks a lot.
That's right. Well, I do think about this a lot because I'm not a coach, and I'm not a manager either. But so it just makes me wonder, like, what is the right context, for using these things?
But I love that you're living in this space, because one of the first things, the very first coach I ever worked with challenged me with was to be an entrepreneur inside my company. And she called it an intrapreneur. I was like, what is that? She said, well, instead of thinking like an employee, think like an entrepreneur. Think like a consultant. If you were a consultant that was being paid thousands of dollars to fix this situation or to help this company get on its feet or this department, who would you be being?
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, that's a different mindset. So what I hear and what you're doing and what you're up to is you're being in the mindset of a leader, we're going somewhere, regardless of whether you have the title or not.
Yeah.
I love that.
Well, here's my second question for you. So the book says, stop giving out advice and start asking questions. Well, this itself is advice, So when do you give someone advice and when do you not?
So I've really struggled with this, especially so my coaching training was very rigorous. And when I was going through my certification program, there was no room for advice. And it was, if you ventured into any advice giving, you got dinged for it. So I was very, very careful. And that was actually one of the things I originally loved about coaching was, I get to figure this out for myself. I'm going to give myself my own advice instead of taking everyone else's bad advice. The places where I've started to veer into like, okay, I'll give you some advice if it's really silly. Hey, John, do you have any good books on coaching? Well, Ken, what's the deeper challenge for you here? It's like, shut up, John. I already looked on Google. Like, what did Google tell you, Ken? Like, so there are certain, I don't know, when it's information or it's, I don't know, I guess it'd be the context. What's the relationship? Has Ken come to me 5 times and asked me for books on coaching? You haven't. I'm just making this up.
Yeah. No, yeah.
Okay, this is the 6th time. You know what, Ken? Let's get out. Let's do a screen share on Zoom and let me show you how to use Google. And let me show you how to go to your local library. That would be like advice.
And one of the things that I think stand out to me about the screen share solution is that we're participating in it together. And I think that, what I've realized in the past is my inclination would be like, well, let me spend like a half hour Googling that, where you go get to have fun for 30 minutes while I go do this work. And it really needs to be like, no, we are participating in this together and it's costing us both the same amount of time to put in the work.
That's beautiful. You took I was kind of joking around, but you're spot on. And what keeps coming to me too in these conversations is this idea of scale, which is an overused corporate. We got to scale this situation. We got to learn to scale, which is essentially what you're doing, but in a positive way. And yeah, I'm not mocking it at all, but that word scale is should be on a bingo card somewhere.
Well, my last question is, when have these questions failed you?
I would say these questions usually fail. Well, I kind of alluded to it earlier. If I'm not coming from a good place, like if my motivations are amiss, they don't tend to work. And thinking purely of it, I was going to say, there's something about the other person too, which I'm a little conflicted as I'm speaking, because I'm all about, the only thing I can control is me and taking ownership, and it's not about the other person, it's about what I'm doing. And yet I guess I've been in some situations where the other person I don't want to say they weren't coachable. Well, maybe that is the term. In other words, they didn't want to go there. They just wanted the advice. That was it. In other words, they weren't. What I love about what you're doing and what I hear in all this stuff, you're looking like 2 or 3 levels deeper. What's really going on here? Who am I being? What's happening? Why am I in this hero victim thing? And how do I get out of it? Versus just someone fix my life and tell me what to do.
For me, and maybe you've put this into words, but recently I was walking through some of these questions with someone and the answers were like, I don't know. Like, if you ask somebody like,
oh, yes.
What do I want? I don't know. How do you respond with that?
Oh, I love this question. There's several places to go. There's one school of thought that says, I don't know is a cop-out. That in our deep subconscious, we really do know, and that we're just avoiding. Sometimes I think that's true. Sometimes I think for people that live in their heads too much, like myself, it like compounds the problem.
Yeah.
So if you say, John, so what do you really want in this situation? And I say, I don't know. And you say, well, John, you really do know. You're just not willing to go there.
Right.
Then I get pissed because I'm like, well, how do you know I won't go there? So I have heard that point of view espoused. I think there's something to it. Depends on the situation. I've had some fascinating conversations with people where maybe we're coaching. Typically it's in the context of coaching where, I don't know. So sometimes I'll play with that. Wow. What's it like to be in a place of not knowing? Well, what do you mean? Like, well, what's it like in the land of I don't know? Oh, it's depressing. It's frustrating. I just feel so stuck. And then we might talk about being stuck or how they might want to get unstuck. And then it's not about I don't know. It's about being stuck.
I think I was maybe scared to bring up the idea of, or maybe I was just a little hesitant to say, what's it like to not know? It can come off
I don't like you're a therapist.
Bit, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
or that I'm a therapist, or also that it's a little bit like too rude or something.
Cheeky?
Like, yes, cheeky. That's
okay.
the word.
Yeah, so in this particular context, for some reason, I can remember exactly where I was sitting. I can't remember exactly who I was talking to. Oh, maybe I can. It was said from a place of, again, it's all where you're coming, where is the question coming from? Is it, oh my gosh, I'm so frustrated with this person. I wish they would just finally get it together. Dude, what's it like to not know? Come on.
Yeah.
Which is totally different from a place of, this is several years ago, but I'm remembering it as just this very spacious, open, wow, what is it like to not know? And it was very grounded and said with, like, there was a different energy going on.
Yeah.
You know what? It may not, now that I'm thinking about it, I think it was actually from a supervision session that I had early on where I was listening to this thing with a supervisor. And I was like, yeah, where do I go with this client? They're always in this place of, I don't know. And that's where her suggestion was, talk about it, speak to it.
Do you think that's a little bit more effective when it's a pattern versus like the first
Yes.
thing? Okay.
Yes. Again, when I'm talking to Fred at the barbecue and I'm like, so Fred, like, well, okay, so it sounds like you're getting totally screwed at your job. What do you want to do next? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Wow, Fred, what if you did know? No.
I know. That's totally what I'm picturing. It's like, wait, what? This is taking a very weird turn.
Yes. Yeah. And so it's context. How well do you know the person? What's really going on? Do they really want to know? I'll share from my own life. Recently, I was in kind of a dark place, and it was so great because when I meet with my coach, I bring it all. I bring exactly where I am, even if it's about him. And I'm just like, yeah, I don't think you can help me today, but whatever, we're just meeting. So I started this thing with, I really don't know where to go. And he asked me the best question. And anyone that's a coach out there, anyone else, maybe use it in your life. He said with the most love and kindness, he said, okay, cool. Tell me 5 things you know and 5 things you don't know. I was like, okay, well, I know that by the end of today's session, something's going to happen that I never saw coming, and I'm going to feel better and kind of, get back on the track again. What I don't know is how that's going to happen. But I do know, and I don't even know if I got to 5 or 10 or whatever, but it completely unlocked things to kind of bounce back and forth between this is what I know, this is what I don't know, this is what I know, this is what I don't know. And it just took the charge. Because I think there's a lot of, at least for me, when I'm in that place of I don't know, it brings up a lot of self-judgment. Well, I should know.
Right.
And then I feel even worse. So I don't know where I've taken us. Bring us back.
Yeah, I like it because, you could, I think that, when you're a manager, you don't get to choose your reports, right? And sometimes you can jump into these one-on-ones, ask what's on your mind, and nothing.
Yes.
It's like, oh, okay. And, when it's coaching, usually the people are motivated to be there and so on. when you're a manager, that can be more up in the air. So
that's a great distinction. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
What advice would you give for a manager that's kind of in that situation where they're just not getting a whole lot back?
I struggle with this one as a manager myself. In other words, I'm not much of a small talker.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the first, so how was your weekend? And what did you do with your family? And okay, now let's get to your to-do list. A lot of times I just skip that stuff. I just go straight to like, so what are, what's going on?
Yeah.
And the person that doesn't want to go there, I think I want to say it all depends. I might speak to it. Seems like you don't really want to go there today.
Yeah.
There's, yeah. In fact, I feel like that was one of the last pages of the book, or somewhere in here, was the idea of being curious. And I would phrase it as being curious about what is, or what's occurring to me. It seems to me, I'm getting this sense, like, you really don't want to go there. Do you, like, what's going on? Do you not like small talk? Do you just want to talk about your problems and then I can free you up to go solve your problems or whatever you're working on? I think you did a great job there holding the silence. I think too, for the person that has the direct report that never knows what they want, and it's just this kind of ongoing power struggle or battle, is maybe to issue some ultimatum. I'm here to help you. I'll get you some help. If I'm the wrong person to help you, let me know. And we need to move past this by a certain period of time, or we're going to have to come up with something different.
Yeah.
Because it can be a way to, because I have seen within my coaching, I have seen direct reports hold managers hostage. I don't know. And the manager's just kind of chasing them around, trying to figure out what it is and guess what's in their mind. And it's like the reportee has all the power. I'm not a fan of that. But you were going to say something.
Oh, it just reminds me of the chapter that we talked about a while back. Was it Steve Chandler's book about reaching agreement versus expectation?
Oh, agreements. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Oh, bring that in, because I'll link to that as well.
I think it just reminded me of, like, that's a situation where it's like I could lay out the hard line as the boss, like, these are my expectations, so get in line. Or it's like we could reach an agreement. And I think in that chapter, he talks about, like, ultimately, it's like, if you can't keep your agreements, there is the carrot and the stick stuff in there for sure.
Yes.
But it's a more collaborative process, essentially. Like, what would work for you?
And what Ken's speaking to here is Steve Chandler has this idea of creating agreements with people as being far more powerful than having expectations of them. A lot of times when we have expectations for people, we haven't even articulated them. And they have expectations for us, and they haven't articulated them either. And then we're living in this morass of frustration because nobody's expectations are being met. So in his way of just cutting through things like a knife, which he does, he likes to say, I like to form agreements with people. So sit down and say, could we come to an agreement that we will do this by this date, or that you will do this, or that I will do that, or whatever. And the language, just like the language in this book, can feel a little stiff. Some of my clients have challenged me on it. And I think there are softer ways to do it. But I've even seen this work with my wife, even where, I expect that she will do a certain thing or be a certain way. And then she's not. And I get all mad. And then when I go to her and I say, could we agree that in this situation, you will do this and I will do that? And she'll say yes, or she'll say no. But we have a much cleaner arrangement that leads us to a much better place. So that's the idea of agreements and expectations. Anything you would add to that?
No, I think we've covered it.
Well, any final thoughts on the coaching habit? I should mention, oh, look at that. I asked my question and then I added more Okay, I'm going to add a little more and then you can respond. So the coaching habit, see, I'm still working on this. The author of this book, by the way, is Michael Bungay Stanier. So Ken, any final thoughts, questions, things we left out to say about the coaching habit?
One last thing that occurs to me is like, who is this book good for? Because when I've read it, like I just mentally substitute in the word leader for manager whenever he's saying like, managers need to know their people. It's like, well, that's true of all leaders, right? But I would say, the couple of concrete scenarios that have come to my mind, we have summer interns that come at Red Hat, and this means that sometimes our engineers become mentors for these interns. So these engineers, they might not be managers and never want to be, but they're put into a manager type role because they need to learn how to lead these interns. So I think that book really applies in that situation.
Beautiful. And what pops to my mind there too is the classic, the definition often of mentor though is like advice giver.
Yeah.
So yes, so I guess maybe a challenge from me and maybe from you as well would be if you're put into a mentor role, don't automatically assume that role. You may get a more powerful outcome for your mentee if you also occasionally put on the hat of coach, and maybe you want to do it with permission versus just assuming it.
Yeah.
All right, Ken.
Cool.
Well, thanks so much. Thanks for your ongoing feedback on this book. It's been really, really fun to talk about.
Yeah, it's been fun for me too.
Thanks for listening to The John Polster Show. Notes, links, and all that other good stuff for this episode are at johnpolster.com/podcast. Send your questions, ideas, or a simple hello to podcast@johnpolster.com. Want to stay up to date on new episodes and receive notifications of upcoming events? Register your email address at johnpolster.com/updates.